Your mom or me, Amanda said, her voice as sharp and cold as the glass of ice water in her hand. My son, my David, stood between us, his shoulders slumped, his eyes fixed on the pristine white tiles of their kitchen floor. He didn't have to say a word. In the crushing silence of that impossibly perfect room, in the way he refused to meet my gaze, I already knew his choice. My world, which had been shrinking for years, finally collapsed into a single, suffocating point of pain. Structural analysis opening. Does the initial hook cause immediate impact? Yes, the ultimatum, your mom or me, is a classic, high-stakes opening that immediately establishes a core conflict. It forces the reader into the middle of a family drama. At its breaking point, is the central mystery established? Yes, the mystery isn't just what David will choose that's made clear by his silence, but why it has come to this. Why is Amanda so hostile? And why is David so passive? The line, my world, had been shrinking for years, hints at a long-term problem. Is curiosity about what really happened active? Absolutely, the reader is immediately asking, what did the mother do? What's the backstory? Why is the son so defeated? The final sentences of the third paragraph, about David's pain being for himself and the presence of a devastating secret, explicitly turn the emotional conflict into a narrative mystery. Is there a request for engagement in the video? Yes, a direct request is included after the initial setup, framed in a way that promises the mystery will be solved. The ultimatum hung in the air, thick and poisonous, a final, unanswerable blow. I had felt it coming for months. The way you feel a storm gathering on a humid day, the little barbs from Amanda, the canceled visits, the way David would flinch when I called, but hearing the words spoken aloud was different. It was the closing of a door I never thought could be locked. I looked at my son, the boy I had raised alone after his father passed, the boy whose scraped knees I had bandaged and whose nightmares I had soothed. He was a stranger now, a man trapped in a web I couldn't see, and he was letting go of my hand. Amanda watched me, her expression a mask of detached victory. There was no pleasure in her eyes, just a chilling, methodical satisfaction, as if she were simply crossing an item off a long and terrible list. I didn't fight, I didn't beg. What was the point? The battle had been lost long before the war was declared. I simply nodded, a slow, tired motion that seemed to take all the strength I had left. I'll get my things, I whispered, my voice a dry rustle of leaves. The few boxes I'd brought with me when I moved in 6 months ago were still half unpacked in the guest room, a silent testament to how unwelcome I had always been. As I turned to walk away, I caught a glimpse of David's face. It was a canvas of pure agony, and for a terrifying second, I realized his pain wasn't for me, his mother being cast out. It was for himself. That was the secret, I knew then. A devastating secret was at the heart of this, and my son was its first and most helpless prisoner. Development. Are clues revealed gradually? Yes, the story transitions from the initial emotional shock to a slow burn of clues. Amanda's methodical satisfaction, the half-unpacked boxes, David's specific type of pain, the sterile house, the missing rose bushes, the removed photograph, the locked box, the cryptic memory of her husband's warning, the bruise on Lily's arm, the neighbor's story of a strange visitor, and finally, the key. Each clue deepens the mystery rather than simplifying it. Does suspicion grow consistently? Yes, suspicion shifts from Amanda is a cruel daughter-in-law to something is very wrong with my son, then to this is somehow connected to my late husband, Richard, and finally to Amanda has a hidden, personal motive that predates her relationship with David. The threat level escalates from emotional pain to physical danger, the bruise to a deep-seated conspiracy. Are flashbacks present balanced? Yes, flashbacks are used purposefully to contrast the warm past with the cold present. The memory of David as a boy at his father's funeral heightens the pain of his current betrayal. The memory of meeting Amanda introduces foreshadowing. The memory of Richard's warning directly ties the past to the central mystery. They provide emotional context and crucial clues without bogging down the forward momentum. Does each paragraph add a new layer of mystery? Yes, this is a key strength. Paragraph 1. The ultimatum. Paragraph 3. The secret. Paragraph 4. The sterile house. Erasure of her identity. Paragraph 5. The broken promise. Emotional context. Paragraph 7. The word, danger, escalation. Paragraph 8. Amanda's strange past comments. Foreshadowing. Paragraph 9. The removed rose bushes. Deliberate cruelty. Paragraph 10. The missing photo. Specific clue. Paragraph 11. The locked box and Richard's warning. The mystery solidifies. The guest room, which they had generously called Eleanor's suite, felt more like a waiting room than a home. The walls were a sterile gray. The furniture looked like it had been chosen from a catalog of things no one would ever love, and the window looked out onto a perfectly manicured lawn that was watered by an automatic sprinkler system, erasing any need for human touch. It was Amanda's house, through and through. My things. A framed photo of my late husband, Richard, a worn copy of my favorite book, a hand-knitted Afghan, looked like museum artifacts, relics from another time, another life. I packed them methodically, my hands moving with a steadiness that betrayed the frantic thumping in my chest. Each object was a memory. The photo of Richard, taken on our 20th anniversary, his arm around me, his smile so full of life it hurt to look at. He'd been gone for 10 years, but in that moment, the loss felt as raw as a fresh wound. He would have never let this happen. He would have stood up to Amanda. He would have protected me. But he was gone, and David was not his father. As I taped the last box shut, a wave of dizziness washed over me. I sat on the edge of the perfectly made bed, the duvet so stiff it crinkled under my weight. A memory surfaced, unbidden. David, age 7, clutching my leg at his father's funeral. He had been so small, so terrified. "You won't ever leave me, right, Mommy?" He had sobbed into my black dress. "Never," I had promised, stroking his hair. "It's you and me against the world, kiddo." A bitter laugh escaped my lips. What a foolish promise. The world had won. I heard a soft knock on the door. It was David. He wouldn't come in, just stood in the doorway, a ghost in his own home. "Mom," he started, his voice cracking. I'm sorry. Sorry." The word was so small, so inadequate for the chasm that had opened between us. "Where will you go?" he asked, his eyes still avoiding mine. "Don't you worry about me, David," I said, my voice firmer than I felt. "I've been on my own before. I'll be fine." He flinched as if I had struck him. He knew I was talking about after his father died. He knew I was reminding him of a time when we only had each other. It was a cruel thing to do, but I was bleeding, and I wanted him to see the wound. He just nodded, a puppet on a string, and disappeared. I didn't see him again before I left. A taxi was waiting for me, ordered and paid for by Amanda, no doubt. As I dragged my boxes to the curb, I saw her watching from the large picture window, a silhouette against the warm, inviting light of the life I was no longer a part of. She didn't wave. She just watched. It was then that a cold sliver of fear lodged itself in my heart. This wasn't just a case of a daughter-in-law who didn't like her husband's mother. This was something else. This was personal. This felt like a hunt. And I was the prey. The little one-bedroom apartment I found was on the 3rd floor of a walk-up, with windows that faced a brick wall. The silence was the first thing I noticed. In David's house, there was always the sound of my granddaughter, Lily, laughing or the hum of the television. Here, the only sound was the buzz of the old refrigerator and the frantic beating of my own heart. I spent the first few days in a fog, unpacking boxes and arranging my life into this new, smaller shape. I tried calling David a few times, but his phone went straight to voicemail. I knew Amanda was screening his calls. I imagined her deleting my messages, erasing my existence with the tap of a finger. One evening, desperate to hear a familiar voice, I called the house line. Amanda answered on the first ring. "Hello?" Her voice was crisp, businesslike. "Amanda, it's Eleanor." I was just hoping to speak to David for a moment. There was a pause. I could hear the television in the background. "He's busy, Eleanor," she said flatly. "And besides, I think we agreed it's best to have some space right now. I just want to know how Lily is," I pleaded, my voice sounding weak and pathetic even to my own ears. "Lily is fine," she snapped. "She doesn't need to be involved in this drama. She needs stability." And then I heard it, a sound that made the blood in my veins run cold. In the background, I heard Amanda say to someone else in the room, likely David, "It's your mother again. I don't know why she won't just leave us alone. She's a danger to this family." Then the line went dead. Danger? Me? I was a danger? I made oatmeal cookies and read bedtime stories. I kissed scraped knees and taught Lily how to tie her shoes. How could I possibly be a danger? The word echoed in the silent apartment. It was a deliberate choice of word, meant to wound, but it did more than that. It planted a seed of suspicion. What did she mean by that? What lie had she told David to turn him so completely against me? My thoughts drifted back to the first time I met her. David had been so excited to introduce us. He'd brought her over for dinner, and she was everything a mother could hope for. She was beautiful, intelligent, and laughed at all my stupid jokes. She brought me a bouquet of my favorite flowers, lilies, a gesture so thoughtful it brought tears to my eyes. "She's the one, Mom," David had whispered to me in the kitchen while Amanda was in the bathroom. I had believed him, but even then, there were tiny, dissonant notes. I remember showing her a photo album, pointing out a picture of Richard. "This was David's father," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "He would have loved you." Amanda's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "He looks like a strong man," was all she said, her voice oddly flat. Later, as she was leaving, she made a comment that I brushed off at the time. We were talking about David's career, and I mentioned how proud his father would have been. "It's important not to be held back by the past," Amanda had said, squeezing David's hand. "Sometimes family can be an anchor when you're trying to sail forward." At the time, I thought it was a profound, if slightly cold, observation. Now, it sounded like a threat. Weeks turned into a month. The loneliness was a physical weight, pressing down on my chest. I missed the small things most. The smell of Lily's hair after her bath, the weight of her small body curled up next to me on the sofa, the sound of David puttering in the garage, just like his father used to. My old life had been erased, and I felt like a ghost haunting the edges of my own family. One Tuesday, I couldn't bear it anymore. I needed to see my house. Their house. I took a bus and walked the last few blocks, my heart pounding with a mixture of dread and longing. The house looked the same from the outside, but as I got closer, I saw the changes. My rose bushes, the ones Richard had planted for me on our first anniversary, were gone. In their place was a bed of severe, modern-looking ornamental grasses. It was a small thing, but it felt like a desecration. I walked around to the back, my feet moving on their own. The back door was locked, of course. I peered through the glass of the kitchen door. The whole room had been remodeled. My warm, oak cabinets were gone, replaced with sleek, white ones. The old, worn kitchen table where we'd shared thousands of meals had been replaced with a sterile glass and chrome monstrosity. It was like they were systematically erasing every trace of me, of my life with Richard, of our family's history. I saw a light on in the den, the room where I kept all our old photo albums. On a sudden, desperate impulse, I tried the window. It was unlocked. My hands trembled as I slid it open and hoisted myself inside. The room was different, too. The comfortable, overstuffed armchair was gone. The walls were painted a cool gray, but the bookshelf with the albums was still there. I pulled one out, the one from David's childhood. I flipped through the pages, my fingers tracing the smiling faces of the past. There was David on his first bike, Richard pushing him, both of them grinning. There was our trip to the Grand Canyon, our faces sunburned and happy. Then I saw a blank space. A photo had been carefully removed, the little black paper corners empty. I knew exactly which picture it was. It was my favorite one of Richard and me, taken on our honeymoon. We were young, impossibly young, and so in love. Why would Amanda take that one picture? It made no sense. It was just a photo of two people she had never met together. Unless it wasn't about me at all. What if it was about him? Shaking, I put the album back and fled, climbing back out the window and running down the street, not stopping until the house was out of sight. Back in my sterile apartment, the question burned in my mind. Why that photo? Why Richard? My eyes fell on the boxes I still hadn't fully unpacked. In one of them was a small, cedar box that had belonged to him. It was a simple thing, a box where he kept important papers, old cufflinks, odds and ends. I hadn't opened it in years. I rummaged through the cardboard box until my fingers brushed against the cool, smooth wood. I pulled it out and set it on the table. It was locked, and the tiny key was gone. I searched everywhere. I emptied my jewelry box, I went through old purses, I checked every drawer. Nothing. The key was missing. The locked box sat on my coffee table, a silent sentinel. What was inside? What had Richard locked away? A chill ran down my spine as I remembered something he had said to me just a few weeks before the heart attack that took him. He had been so stressed, working late, his face etched with worry. I had asked him what was wrong, and he had waved it away. "Just business," he'd said. But then he grabbed my hands, his grip surprisingly tight, and looked me straight in the eye. "Eleanor," he'd said, his voice low and urgent, "promise me something. Promise me you'll always protect David. No matter what. Some things. Some things are better left buried." I had promised, of course, though I didn't understand. I had chalked it up to stress. Now his words felt like a prophecy. My desperation to see my granddaughter, Lily, became an ache that throbbed with every beat of my heart. After a week of unanswered calls, I did something I knew I shouldn't. I went to her school. I waited across the street, hiding behind a large oak tree just to catch a glimpse of her. When the bell rang, I saw her come out, her little pink backpack bouncing as she ran. Amanda was there to pick her up. Lily saw me. Her face lit up. "Grandma," she yelled and started to run towards me. Amanda grabbed her arm, a sharp, angry motion. "Lily, no," she said, her voice a harsh command. "We don't talk to that woman." Lily's face crumpled and she started to cry. Amanda pulled her towards the car, not even looking at me. But as they passed, I saw a dark, ugly bruise on Lily's upper arm, right where Amanda had grabbed her. My breath caught in my throat. Had she done that? Was she hurting my granddaughter? The image of that bruise was seared into my brain. The word Amanda had used on the phone echoed in my ears. Danger. Was she projecting? Was she the danger? Comment on which city you're watching and subscribe to the channel because I guarantee there's more to this story than meets the eye. The fear for Lily eclipsed my own pain. I had to do something. I called David's cell phone again and again, leaving frantic messages. "David, please call me. It's about Lily. I saw something. I'm worried." Finally, that evening, he called back. His voice was weary, strained. "Mom, what is this?" "Amanda said you were at the school. You can't do that." "David." I saw a bruise on her arm where Amanda grabbed her. "Is she hurting her?" I asked. The words tumbling out, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Mom, stop," he said, his voice dangerously low. "Just stop." Lily fell off the swings at the park. "Amanda would never, ever hurt her. You're imagining things. You're trying to cause trouble because you're angry." "I'm not angry. I'm scared," I cried. "This isn't right, David. The way Amanda is, the way you are. Something is wrong. What's wrong is that you won't accept that I have my own family now." He shot back, his voice rising. "My own life. A life that doesn't revolve around you. Amanda is my wife, Lily is my daughter, and I will protect them even from you." The line went dead. He had hung up on me. He thought I was lying. He thought I was a bitter old woman trying to ruin his marriage. And he had chosen to believe the woman who bruised his daughter's arm over his own mother. I felt a new kind of resolve harden within me. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about Lily. If David wouldn't protect her, I would. I had to find out what was really going on. I had to understand the power Amanda held over my son. I started thinking like a detective. I went back over every conversation, every interaction, searching for clues. The missing photo of Richard. Amanda's strange comment about family holding you back. My husband's cryptic warning to protect David. And the locked box. It all seemed to point back to the past, back to Richard. I called my old neighbor, Martha, who still lived next door to the house. I made up some excuse about wanting to know how the new landscaping looked. We chatted for a bit, and then I casually asked, "So, how are David and Amanda doing?" "They seem happy." Martha hesitated. "Oh, she said vaguely. "They keep to themselves, mostly." "She's an intense woman." "Intense how?" I prodded. "Well," Martha lowered her voice. "It's probably nothing, but a few times late at night, I've seen a man come to the house. A man in a fancy car. He never stays long. He and Amanda talk out on the porch. David's never with them. It just seems odd. A strange man?" My mind raced. Was Amanda having an affair? Was that the secret? Was she blackmailing David? It seemed plausible. It would explain his fear, his submission. My focus returned to the locked box. I was convinced the answers were inside. I tried to pick the lock with a paperclip, then a bobby pin, but it was no use. I was about to give up when an idea struck me. The missing photo. Why that specific photo? What was so special about it? I thought about the frame. It was an old, heavy silver one Richard had given me. I remembered it had a thick, velvet backing. I drove to the house in the middle of the day when I knew they would be at work and school. My heart hammered against my ribs as I slipped in through the unlocked window again. I went straight to the den. I scanned the bookshelves, the mantelpiece. Where would Amanda put a photo she didn't want me to see, but couldn't bring herself to throw away? My eyes landed on David's new home office. It had been my sewing room. On his desk, facing his chair, was a single, small photo frame. It wasn't the big silver one. It was a simple, modern one. But inside it was a picture of David as a little boy, maybe 5 years old, sitting on his father's shoulders. And behind that photo, tucked into the frame, was the missing picture of me and Richard on our honeymoon. My hands shook as I took the frame apart. Why hide it there? It made no sense. Then my fingers brushed against something hard and flat taped to the back of the photo. A tiny, brass key. The key to the cedar box. Climax/plot twist. Does the revelation recontextualize the entire story? Yes, completely and brilliantly. Every single clue snaps into place. Amanda isn't a monster. She's a victim seeking justice. David isn't weak. He's trapped by his father since Richard isn't a sainted dead husband. He's the villain. Amanda's coldness, her erasure of the past, her comment about family being an anchor, her hatred of Richard's photo, it all makes perfect, tragic sense. The story transforms from a simple family drama into a multi-generational tale of crime and revenge. Is the protagonist's collapse moment present? Yes, it's the moment she drops the letter. This is her true collapse. Far more profound than being kicked out of the house her entire life. Her marriage, her identity as the good one, is revealed to be a lie. It's a devastating moment of realization where she understands she is not the victim, but the widow of the villain. Is the truth more complex than the initial appearance? Immensely so. It moves beyond a black and white conflict, good mother versus bad daughter-in-law, into a morally gray tragedy where every character is flawed, wounded, and motivated by complex emotions: love, shame, revenge, guilt. I didn't wait. I took the key and left, my mind a whirlwind of confusion and fear. Back in my apartment, I fumbled with the lock. The key turned. The lid of the cedar box creaked open. The scent of old paper and my husband's faint, lingering cologne filled the air inside. There were no cufflinks, no old love letters. It was filled with papers, old, yellowed financial statements, bank records, and a thick, sealed envelope with my name, Eleanor, written in Richard's familiar scrawl. My hands trembled so violently I could barely open it. Inside was a letter, several pages long, dated 1 week before he died. My dearest Eleanor. It began, if you are reading this, it means I am gone, and the secrets I have carried are in danger of coming to light. I pray that you never have to read these words. I have lived my life with a lie, a terrible lie that has haunted my every waking moment, and I must now confess it to you, not for my own absolution, but for David's protection. My blood ran cold. I kept reading. Richard, my kind, honest, hardworking Richard, laid out a story so monstrous I couldn't comprehend it years ago. Before we were even married, he had been in a business partnership with a man named Thomas Miller together. They started an investment company, but Richard, greedy and ambitious, had started a fraudulent scheme, creating a pyramid scheme that built dozens of investors out of their life savings. Thomas Miller, his partner, had discovered the fraud and threatened to expose him to silence him. Richard had framed him, manipulating the records to make it look like Thomas was the sole architect of the crime. The letter continued, each word a hammer blow to the foundation of my life. Thomas Miller was convicted. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison, his name disgraced, his family ruined. He died in prison of a heart attack 5 years into his sentence. He left behind a wife and a young daughter. A daughter who had to grow up in poverty, watching her mother work 3 jobs to keep them afloat, all while carrying the shame of her father's name. A daughter named Amanda. I dropped the letter. I couldn't breathe. Amanda Miller. Amanda wasn't a cruel stranger who hated me for no reason. She was the daughter of the man my husband had destroyed. Her entire life had been a quest for revenge. She hadn't married David by accident. She had sought him out. She had meticulously planned every step of her infiltration into our family. She didn't want my son. She wanted my son's life. She wanted to take everything Richard had built, everything he loved, and tear it down, piece by piece. The house, the money, his son, and me. She wanted me to suffer the same way her mother had suffered. Alone, abandoned, and stripped of everything she held dear. The pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. Her coldness. Her systematic erasure of my past. The missing photo of Richard. She couldn't stand to look at his face. The phrase, a danger to this family. I wasn't a danger. The truth was. And David. My poor, trapped David. He must have found out. Amanda must have told him the truth after they were married, after Lily was born. He was trapped not by a manipulative wife, but by the sins of his own father. The ultimatum, your mom or me, it wasn't a simple choice. It was a choice between protecting his mother's blissful ignorance and holding his own family together, a family built on a foundation of vengeance and lies. His downward glance wasn't a choice for her over me. It was the crushing weight of a secret he couldn't bear to speak. I fell to the floor, the letter clutched in my hand, and I sobbed. I wept for the husband I never really knew, a man capable of such profound cruelty. I wept for Thomas Miller and his wife, their lives destroyed. I wept for Amanda, a young girl whose heart had been poisoned by a righteous need for revenge. And most of all, I wept for my son, who was paying the price for a crime he didn't commit. My entire life, my whole marriage, was a lie. I wasn't the victim in this story. I was the widow of the villain. Ending is the emotional resolution powerful? Yes, it avoids a simplistic, happy ending. The resolution is mature and complex. Eleanor's apology to Amanda is the true climax, subverting the revenge plot and offering empathy instead of conflict. This is far more powerful than a screaming match. The reconnection with David is quiet and based on a shared, painful truth. Is the universal message clear? Yes. The story powerfully communicates that the sins of the past have long-reaching consequences, that hatred can be a prison, and that true strength lies not in revenge, but in empathy and the courage to break a cycle of pain. The final scene, with Amanda's almost imperceptible nod, perfectly encapsulates a truce born from tragedy, which is a realistic and emotionally satisfying conclusion. After the storm of grief passed, a strange calm settled over me. The anger was gone, the sense of betrayal replaced by a vast, aching sadness. I knew what I had to do. I couldn't change the past. I couldn't bring back the man my husband had destroyed. But I could stop the cycle of pain. I called David. Meet me at the park by the old house, I said, my voice steady. Alone. We need to talk. When he arrived, he looked haggard, older than his years. He sat on the park bench beside me, leaving a careful distance between us. I didn't say anything at first. I just handed him his father's letter. He read it, his face growing paler with every line. When he finished, he didn't look up. He just stared at the damning words on the page, and a single tear traced a path through the stubble on his cheek. I found out a few years ago, he whispered, his voice hoarse. Amanda found some old papers. She confronted me. She told me everything. I didn't know what to do, Mom. I love her. And Lily. I was so ashamed. Dad, how could he? He was a man, David, I said softly, my own heart aching for the image of the father he had just lost for a second time. A flawed, broken man who made a terrible choice. Just like we all are. He finally looked at me, his eyes filled with a pain so deep it mirrored my own. I'm so sorry, Mom. I should have told you. I was just trying to hold it all together. I know, I said, and for the first time in months, I reached out and took my son's hand. I know, the next step was the hardest. I went to the house. I knocked on the front door. Amanda opened it, her face instantly hardening when she saw me. Before she could speak, I held up my hand. Please, Amanda. 5 minutes. That's all I ask. She hesitated, her eyes filled with suspicion, but she stepped aside and let me in. We stood in the foyer, the silence stretching between us. I know, I said simply. I know everything. About your father. About what Richard did to him. To your family. Her mask of cold composure finally cracked. For a split second, I saw the wounded girl underneath. Her body tensed, ready for a fight, for a denial, for the final confrontation she had been building towards her entire life. I didn't come here to fight, I continued, my voice quiet but clear. I can't imagine the pain you've carried. The anger. What my husband did was unforgivable. It destroyed your life, and no apology can ever change that. But I am offering one anyway. From the bottom of my heart, I am so sorry for the pain my family has caused yours. Amanda just stared at me, her mouth slightly agape. This wasn't in her script. She had prepared for a villain, a clueless old woman she could despise. She hadn't prepared for this. She had spent a lifetime fueled by hatred, and now the target of that hatred was apologizing, offering not a defense, but empathy. The fight went out of her eyes, replaced by a profound, bewildering emptiness. The revenge that had defined her for so long was suddenly meaningless. There was no magical reconciliation. The wounds were far too deep for that. I moved into a small condo in a community for seniors, a place of my own choosing. I built a new life, a quiet one, filled with new friends, book clubs, and long walks. The pain of my husband's betrayal is a scar I will always carry, a shadow that reshaped my past. But the truth, as devastating as it was, set us all free in a way. David and I started talking again, slowly, carefully rebuilding the trust that had been shattered. He started bringing Lily to visit me on Sundays. We don't talk about Richard or Amanda's father. We talk about school, about cartoons, about the future. Sometimes when David drops her off, Amanda waits in the car. She never comes in. But a few weeks ago, as I walked Lily back to the car, Amanda rolled down the window. She looked at me, her expression unreadable. And then she gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't friendship. But it was a truce. It was the first, fragile step out of the darkness of the past. It was, I hope, a beginning. Comment which part of the story left you speechless. Engagement metrics analysis abandonment test. Passed with flying colors, each paragraph ends on a note of rising tension or a new question, making it very difficult to stop. Micro cliffhangers like, what if it was about him? Or finding the key are expertly placed. The dialogue reveals mystery. She's a danger to this family. Rather than explaining things, the disturbing detail of the bruise is a powerful hook that changes the stakes and ensures the reader must continue emotional identification. Excellent. The protagonist awakens. Forced empathy by being cast as a classic victim, an elderly mother cast out by her family, the visceral language, crushing silence, suffocating point of pain, dry rustle of leaves, connects the reader to her emotional state. The conflicts are multi-layered. Mother versus daughter-in-law, mother versus son, protagonist versus her own past, and ultimately, a family's secret versus the present. The twist deepens this by forcing the reader to re-evaluate their empathy and extend it to Amanda, the former antagonist,